This is Inside the Right. All right, Tim, it is official. It took Trump all of 1 week before setting on an election strategy of racism. So you were in Republican politics for a long time. Clearly, there is some potency in this whole world. It's what right-wing media is almost entirely predicated on, and it's what fueled Trump's rise. Do you think that this is going to land the same way when it comes to Kamala?
I don't. Look, I think that there's definitely some strategy here. It's not accident. I think that Trump has been out of the news for a few weeks, and he doesn't like that. And I think he's seething about it. We saw a lot of evidence of that based on his performance at the National Association of Black Journalists, about how grumpy he is about not getting attention. He knows how to get attention back on himself by saying things like this, like Kamala's not really black or whatever. So I think that some of this was trying to bring attention back to him and blunt the momentum. And I do think some of this is kind of rallying again the more the types of voters in the MAGA coalition that are moved by racist attacks on opposition. We saw that drew people in during the birtherism thing. The problem with this is that we're about over a decade since the whole birtherism thing. We saw in 2020 it's a huge backlash to the way that Trump did racist, kind of rhetoric following George Floyd, and then with Kung Flu, and COVID. There's a lot of the swing voters here. The ones that I like focus on a lot. These former Republican types, they're college educated. They don't, I'm not saying that they're not racist or don't have a racist bone in their body, but they don't want to think about America as a racist country. They don't want
Yeah,
Archie Bunker as the president. And so
right.
I think that he's like turning off a pretty key swing constituency. And that happened in 2020. And I think you saw in the polls, a huge move away from him when, after Lafayette Square, after, the kind of really, racist remarks on the Black Lives Matter protesters. And so I don't think it's an effective strategy, but I do think it's an intentional one.
Well, clearly, he's going for something of a base-only approach. That's why he picked J.D. Vance. That's why he keeps patting himself on the back for overturning Roe, even though it's unpopular with the general electorate. Do you think the fact that he's clearly not looking to expand his tent is why this could possibly be more effective than we might give him credit for?
No, I mean, I don't think so, just because his side is already really motivated. I mean, following that assassination attempt, I mean, the MAGA numbers are really high. So if you're trying to juice it by kind of activating these non-political racists, like I just think most of those people are pretty activated already.
Right.
I think that there's one thing that I just want to throw out there that they're thinking, which I don't think will work, but I think there's another group that they've said that they are targeting, which is in their expansion targets, which is 18 to 34-year-old black men. The campaign manager, Susie Wiles, was on the record saying that to Tim Alberta at The Atlantic. And I do think that, like, they think that trying to paint Kamala as like not really one of them, right? Like that, like Kamala isn't black. Like she's an Indian lady. Like you don't need to
Right.
rally to her side. I think that they think that that might help them with that 18 to 34-year-old black male demo. I don't know if there's any actual evidence of that's going to help them with that group, but I think that's probably what they're thinking.
Well, it actually seems completely counterintuitive to me, because when you have these two groups, for example, that the Trump campaign has been trying to do outreach with, that is, again, to your point, young people and people of color. Young people are inherently the most diverse generation that we've had in this country, and people of color are clearly able to comprehend the concept of biraciality. So
Right.
they're no strangers to any of this. So how does that help him with these groups who are able to see through what, like, this bad faith bullshit that he's perpetuating by claiming, for example, that he doesn't understand how somebody could be both Indian American and black at the same time, but he's doing it to a group of people who've grown up in a generation where it's so commonplace.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I don't think it's going to work. I think it is a very outdated, it's an old man view. I
Yeah.
think somebody got it in his ear. It is his other advisor, Chris LaCivita, has a history. He did the Swift voting against John Kerry. So this is kind of in his MO to try to go after somebody and undermine them with a core demo that should be good for them. But again, I don't think it's going to work. What makes it even worse, another thing I'd point out, is that I think Trump doesn't even really know his own like not his core base. He knows the people that wear the hats and go to the rallies, but like the broader white working class. Um, this isn't 1952, right?
Right.
Like many people in the white working class across the industrial Midwest, it's very interracial marriages are like very common, right? In a lot of these like rural and small town communities, you've seen an influx of immigrants, and you see a lot of mixed race families. I mean, JD Vance, who he picked as his VP, has a mixed race family. He's not his kids are Indian and white at the same time, and so I think it's a total misunderstanding of what is happening in American culture because he's cloistered at paired with like a really hackneyed kind of attempt to try to reach out to black voters, like based on some, I think, just foolhardy idea that there's going to be a group of black people that feel like Kamala is not black enough for them.
Right. Not black enough, and so they're gonna instead go to the rich white billionaire who once
Orange.
called for the orange billionaire who once called for the execution of 5 wrongly convicted black kids after
Yeah,
Central Park
maybe.
5.
I think that's the theory of the case. I'm not saying it's a good theory. I'm just telling
Right.
you, you bring me on to tell you what they're thinking.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
what they're thinking.
Well, actually, I wanted to drill into the JD Vance of it all because I feel like, there were 2 instances in just the last day or so where Vance really was forced to eat shit beyond just the usual amount of shit that he has to eat just by virtue of sharing a ticket with the guy who he himself called America's Hitler. But Donald Trump was asked point blank if JD Vance would be ready on day 1, and Trump refused to say yeah, instead like straight up distancing himself from his own VP pick by saying, you're not even voting for that guy, you're just voting for me. Like basically forget that guy altogether. And then also this fact that he went on this rampage about how you can't be biracial at the same time that JD Vance is the father to 2 biracial children. And so what do you make of this? What do you make of this this new, like, I guess, weird relationship, this weird, like, almost adversarial relationship that they've taken, which I'm sure is underscored by the fact that JD Vance is just getting utterly killed in the media for his own comments and just general weirdness.
Yeah. And on the first part, I attribute Donald's answer mostly to just his narcissism.
Right. I
He has
would agree
yeah.
with that.
Yeah, he's narcissistic personality disorder, so I don't even really know if it was an intentional attack on JD. It was just more like, oh, who cares? Like I'm the only one that matters here.
Right.
I think in general, we had an article at the Bulwark earlier this week from one of my colleagues about how, there's a lot of infighting right now in the campaign. Like the campaign, they felt like they were on smooth sailings for a while, up till about 3 weeks ago. And now that things have started to get rocky, you're seeing a lot of fingers being pointed, and a lot of that is associated around JD Vance. Some of the people on the campaign think that like Kellyanne Conway and other outside MAGA people are trashing JD because they want to have regime change inside the campaign and bring in old MAGA people. Outside MAGA people are trashing the campaign for trying to distance themselves from some of JD and Project 25 or 2025's more extreme policy elements. So I think that there's a lot of tension happening, and JD Vance is not that good at this. So like he's trying his best to keep daddy happy, and like Trump is increasingly getting annoyed by him. And so I think that what was looking like a very kind of smooth potential campaign for them for a few months there like has really hit a rough spot, and I think that there's a lot of internal tension about the whole deal.
Well, it's not often that I say that I'm grateful for the influence of Don Jr. and Eric, but in this
Yeah.
situation, I am quite grateful for the influence of Don Jr. and Eric. For those watching right now, to support the work that Tim and his team over at the Bulwark are doing, which is especially important because, look, it's giving a permission structure for those disaffected Republicans, for those independents out there, even conservative Democrats who are looking for, some other path other than voting for Donald Trump, to know that there is a community of like-minded people who are also willing to make sure that Donald Trump never gets into the Oval Office again. So very important to support their work and elevate that work. So I'll put the link to their channel, The Bulwark, right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Taylor Cohen.
I'm Tim Miller.
This is Inside the Right.